Did you just throw your phone?
No, I did not throw the phone.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Beg Pardon. As always, I'm your host Anthony, joined by Carlos, and welcome to the show. So, Beg Pardon, for those of you guys who haven't tuned in before, it's a show kind of about everything and nothing at the same time. So what we do is Carlos and I take a topic that you didn't ask us to discuss, and we inject our opinions, which you also didn't ask for, into said topic. So enjoy the show. Make sure that you guys subscribe to our page. All of our socials are linked below this video for you guys as well. So Carlos, how's it going?
That's pretty good. I've been updating, quote unquote, my pop collection. Maria just got me a...
I saw that.
You saw it? It's called The Rise.
Yeah.
And it's He-Man riding Battle Cat, and I saw that and I was like, yes. This is what my soul needed during COVID.
This is what I need, yeah.
Yeah.
So today we're diving into video games. I don't know why I just forgot the topic for a second of what we were diving into. So today we're talking about video games, and we're really talking about kind of like the modern era march of video games, all the way from the very quote unquote first video game, all the way to kind of modern times GTA 5 era type video games. So Carlos, spit some history at me. I know that you know a little bit about the history of video games. So.
I do. Growing up, I was a pretty big gamer. My older sister, she was the middle sister, but older sister, she was a huge gamer. So that was our thing. So I knew a lot about video games from before, but I didn't know anything past like 1980s because, I mean, my sister wasn't around then either. So that would have been weird if we both knew about it pre-internet.
Oh, like prior 1980s.
Prior 1980s. I didn't know anything until I researched. Because like I said, pre-internet, if my sister knew all that, I'd be like, you're a clairvoyant, apparently.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, so I want to say it was 1972, really, when you kind of got into the whole home video game systems, basically. Video games were big in the late 60s, but that was kind of prototypes and things like that.
Was that like was that Pong? Or was that
Pong,
still not there yet?
Not yet. Pong came in 1972.
Gotcha.
It was inspired by an Odyssey game, and Pong was actually released in the home version in 1975. So even then, I mean, you're talking closer to the late 70s that you got into finally Pong. And
my mom had that.
It was a huge seller.
Yeah.
And you look at it now and you're like, how?
Right.
Back then, people were like, "This is like I'm at Wimbledon. Like this is tennis."
yeah.
But yeah, so Pong came out, and it kind of got sued. The Atari company itself got sued for copyright infringement for a lot of the other games, and Atari ended up settling with Odyssey and becoming like an Odyssey licensee. So that's kind of how Atari got into bigger games like the Indiana Jones, things like that, because they started becoming licensees of things. And they won $100 million from the lawsuit. A company called Magnavox, which I believe is a TV company.
The TV, yeah. I think it's the TV people.
Yeah, I remember I brought this up to you before, and you were like, the TVs? And I was like, is that who that is?
Right, yeah. I was like, I think that's the TV people.
And then the Atari that everyone else kind of knows and loves came out in 1977. And that had joysticks, interchangeable game cartridges. That's when you saw the E.T. game, the Indiana Jones game. I think Space Invaders was also Atari, which was a huge deal.
And was the E.T. game like the first true attempt at replicating something that was in modern cinema at the time, or?
No, E.T. came after the Indiana Jones game.
Okay.
But E.T. was the first official flop, so much so that Atari buried their game cartridges and even their hardware in the New Mexico desert.
Literally buried it in the ground.
Literally buried it because they were like, we don't want anybody to know our shame. Right. There's thousands of copies, and they've actually
a sad
dug
time
them up.
Capsule.
It's like an elephant graveyard where they just like threw it there.
Right.
But yeah, they actually dug it up and they saw the game. I doubt the games are playable, unless
That was
you
my
blow
next
on them.
question, was whether they
Yeah.
worked or not.
Just gave them the old and put
Right,
them in.
yeah.
But yeah, and I mean Atari pretty much, they were king until that happened. And then video game fever kind of died down until of course Nintendo came around in the late 70s, early 80s bringing Pac-Man over from Japan, and Pac-Man, I mean, did gangbusters. And then Nintendo eventually created Donkey Kong, who also spun into Mario, and then now we're into the 80s. So,
Yeah. And then in the 80s, and I was looking too, I mean, in the 80s, that's whenever you had most games, I mean, they were set to more, again, like really fictitious type, fantasy type games, or just completely inanimate, like Pong, like there was no, it was like, I guess Wimbledon, like you said, baby. But you had most games at the time set to that until it was 1989, 88. And they were working on Madden, which became like one of the best-selling game franchises ever to date.
maybe you heard of it.
Right, yeah. Just a little unknown indie game. But they were working on that. But everything was so experimental at that time that, and I'm going to read the whole quote, that John Madden reportedly told the developers of the game, fuck that and fuck you people. Either we do it fucking right or we don't fucking do it at all. And he said that to the developers because there was so much fear of it just being a flop, like a weird flop. And Madden didn't want, like, he was like, I'm not going to put my name on this. I mean, he's probably glad he did now.
I would say so.
But that was like back then. I mean, it was just so experimental that it was like, I don't know what it's going to be like. And then around that time too, you had Sega coming into the market with Sonic the Hedgehog, and Sonic the Hedgehog was supposed to be like a more like grown-up version of Mario, of Nintendo's Mario. And like the cool kids played Sonic, and like the young kids, the losers, I guess, played Mario. That was the way that it was marketed. But I think then is whenever you really, in modern times, you started to see like that rivalry of games, and then you had developers and creators coming out with just, these are games meant for these systems, right? And we're gonna go to battle, and whoever has the best game has the best system, because you can only play these on this system. You don't see that now in modern times, because almost everything is very interchangeable. I mean, virtually everything that you can play on like an Xbox, you can play on a PlayStation. You don't have that anymore, except you have slight variants with like Halo, Microsoft exclusive things that are just available on an Xbox, but you really just don't see that rivalry anymore.
Yeah, and in going back to, the Madden thing. So the Madden, quote that you use. I don't know why I forgot the word quote. I was like the saying, the metaphor. The quote was, he was actually working with, at the time, a very early EA Games, and the technology was too hard to do 11 on 11. So what they wanted to do was 7 on 7. And Madden was like, that's not football. And that's where he kind of lost his mind. And it's a colorful quote, as you so elegantly read. But, it goes to show you that people, even back then, it didn't matter about the graphics. What mattered was how you went into this. Like, if you're going to do it to what people are going to expect. And, that happened right as Sega was kind of getting big, like getting into the industry and stuff. And Sega eventually started doing Maddens on there. And the graphics were amazing for that time. And it steamrolled past Nintendo. Because like you said, Nintendo was more for like preteen and childhood. That's where Nintendo lived. Like that's where it made its bank. Before that, actually, in the late 1880s, Nintendo was a playing card company. So
Like
there's
Bicycle.
like Bicycle. And then I think Bicycle came and they were like, we're out. They're too big.
Yeah.
But, and then Nintendo itself they had Super Mario Brothers already, which was huge.
Mm-hmm.
They had Zelda, which was huge. And they had Donkey Kong, which is huge. So Sega really had to come out the gate like swinging. And already Nintendo also had Game Boy. So Sega was kind of behind the eight ball.
And that was in 80, Nintendo, I mean, the Game Boy in the late 80s, that completely changed the game.
Yeah.
Literally. Like, you could, I can now game on, in our family station wagon. I can game at a 4th of July picnic. I don't know what people did in the 80s, but, like, you get the point. Like, it provided a mobile way for people to game, like, recreationally and things that you wouldn't have to, like, plug into a TV and plug into your Magnavox. So I think, I mean, that was cool.
Yeah, and Nintendo, they kind of also gave the way for third-party developers. So that's where you get Capcom's Mega Man and Konami's Castlevania and even like Square Enix Final Fantasy, is because they allowed those people to kind of come in with high-quality games. And the artwork on some of these games, I mean, it looks like legit like movie poster artwork sometimes. It was really well done. And then, not to be outdone, when Sega came out, Sega, like you said, they marketed way more edgy than Nintendo did. I mean, Sonic, like you mentioned, he had an attitude. Sonic he was throwing people down. Street Fighter 2 came out, and Street Fighter changed the whole narrative of everything. Mortal Kombat came out after that. These fighting games started coming out because Sega was like, listen, we are not for kids. Like, this is for the teens.
This is for the big kids.
Yeah, and then even not to be outdone, Sega came out with the Sega Nomad, which was like this big, but it was the handheld version of a Sega.
Imagine that. Could you imagine? Did it have, like, what was the screen like?
The screen was like just as wide, and it was honestly probably about that thick. Was the Nomad, and it was like you were carrying around a car battery.
Right.
But I mean, it was fun, and that kind of was like the precursor to the PSP when PlayStation.
Did you have one?
Yeah, I still have it. It's in the closet over here. Every so often I break it out, and I'm like, all right, gargoyles, here we go.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's whenever you just see a lot more innovation, and the challenge to keep up and the race to keep up was really heightening. So like in the late 80s, early 90s, I mean, Nintendo was becoming, if not already, like top dog. Like, we're going to be top dog in this, and this is our field. So then you had, at the time, a very well-known company, but unknown in the gaming sphere, Sony come out. And then Sony's like, hey, Nintendo, we want to work together and kind of develop ideas together, because we're not sure if we really want to get into this. We're not sure if we really want to be in this industry. We think we want to be into it. You're kind of the reigning champ right now. Let's figure out what this is all about. And then they're working together, but then allegedly there were, I don't know, and Nintendo saw the writing on the wall that Sony wanted to get involved. And I think just in any, capitalistic society, I mean, they want the biggest piece of the pie, right? So why are we going to continue helping somebody? Like, why are we going to continue giving people pieces to our recipe so they can make a better pie, And eventually, in around like 1994, I think it was, 1994, that dissolved completely. And Sony was like, that's fine, we're ready, and released the PlayStation. And the PlayStation wiped. So I can't even describe it in words what the PlayStation did to the gaming industry, because it completely changed the entire landscape. Yeah. And I think it set Sony on a course to arguably be the top dog in the mid-90s all the way through today. That's my personal opinion. Through today, was Sony.
And that's kind of similar to the whole Netflix Blockbuster thing, where Netflix was like, hey, we have and Blockbuster was like, we're the king of videos. And now they're kind of like,
R.I.P.
We ha-
Blockbuster.
we have one store open in like Alaska if you guys want to come in a
Yeah.
time capsule.
Is that store
but yeah,
still open?
It's still open. It's
Yeah,
operating as
there's
an
one.
Airbnb.
Yeah, there's one. What?
For right now, it's operating as an Airbnb to kind of get in some revenue for COVID. Like it's like a themed Airbnb where you can like watch the movies in there, and the snacks are a free for all. You can just pick out snacks.
What? But it's a real. But it's a real.
It's a real Blockbuster.
Blockbuster that has like beds in it.
Well, like
Is
they
it
put
really
it
a
in there
Blockbuster
for-
now?
It's still a Blockbuster, but they put that
Is there
in
a
there
kitchen
now
in there?
for COVID. No. It's just like a
So-
pop-up Airbnb. It's not like a legit.
So I can spend. So I can. That's like me. That's like a pay by the hour motel. Like I'm not gonna leave. I'm not gonna sleep there. Why would I sleep there? I can't even eat. Is there a
You
shower?
can't eat. You
Is there a
can have
shower?
I don't know. I didn't look that deep into
I'm
it.
like, I'm so bothered by this because it doesn't make sense.
Maybe.
All
They
right,
put in a
well,
shower.
I mean that's another episode. We're gonna we'll put the link to the Blockbuster in this video too because I'm curious.
Yeah, just so
but,
you can all check it out.
If any of you guys want to stay there, we'll put that down there for you.
The segue.
You just can't shower or cook any meals or really do
Who knows?
anything.
They
other
might
than
have done
watch
that.
Videos. What?
They might have put in a shower and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Who
We'll
knows?
go over there and we'll check. We'll just we'll
This will
just
be our
fly
next
to Anchor-
episode.
Yeah, I don't know where it's at, but we'll fly over there and we'll check it out. But yeah.
So segueing from Blockbuster into the 90s with the movies was, video games kind of was hitting its height again when you had big screen adaptations of these things. I mean, you had Saturday morning cartoons with like Sonic and Mario Brothers, but now you had a Street Fighter movie, a Mortal Kombat movie, a Super Mario Brothers movie. Not really a video game franchise, but it was made into a video game. You had a Ninja Turtles trilogy, Ninja Rap, if anybody wants to remember Vanilla Ice right there. And out of those 4 movies, 2 of them were good. Spoiler alert, they were Mortal Kombat and Ninja Turtles.
Right, if you guys weren't already well aware, as most of the general public is.
Yeah, so if you're looking for a Best Picture nomination, Mortal Kombat got snubbed that year.
I won't go that far.
But like you said, by the time Sony came on board with PlayStation, they had already had the groundwork for home gaming. They already had the groundwork for better graphics with Sega coming in with a 16-bit after Nintendo had 8-bit. So you went from 8-bit to 16-bit to Super Nintendo, which also had like 16-bit, into PlayStation, which was now like, I mean, at the time, people were like, this is realistic. It looks like a real person.
Right.
And you look back at it now and you're kind of like,
It's like,
yeah.
and they're like big blocks, and their hands were like,
They always had like fists.
yeah.
It was so bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, we got so wrapped up with the PlayStation coming out that you had companies that were just completely, like Sega, completely left behind. Completely.
Mm.
And they weren't able to, like, keep up. So then in the late 90s, they're like, hey, we're still here. We have this thing. It's called a Dreamcast. And it opens up a portal to a whole new way of gaming. And we'll introduce you to the ability of online gaming. Spoiler alert: the Dreamcast, it was. I don't have the sales figures, but it was not well received.
Yeah, I was gonna say you don't need them.
Yeah, you don't need them to know that it wasn't. It's not a hit. It wasn't a sleeper hit. It was no hits of any kind happening with it. But it did help. In my opinion, it did help transition what could be if done well. It just wasn't done well. But to me, that was kind of like a pretty hard nail in the coffin for them. But it showed what could be. So I thought that was important.
Yeah, and I think, my feelings of Dreamcast aside, I think the online gaming has become the massive thing that is now. I mean, you have to have a game. Even Red Dead Redemption has an online feature.
One of the most, like, without sounding creepy, one of the most visually stimulating games I've ever played in my life. Like, I cannot get over how great visually that game is.
When you're building that house, I mean, you feel like you're in there.
Hell, I'm living there.
Yep, exactly.
Yep. And he's tired, I'm tired. Like that I
just wiping your brow.
Right, you do. You really feel like I mean, I can smell the Mountain Dew and strawberry. Like that's really how I feel. I really feel it. I really feel it. So
and even that game though, that was basically just an open world game, has an online feature because people realize how big online gaming became. And that kind of, I think, if I'm wrong, somebody correct me, but I think that was started with Doom way back in the 90s. The first Doom was, it allowed you to play against another person in like a death match. And I think that was the first time you could actually play against someone else like that, in the sense that it was a first person like shooter type game that you can do that. And you know, now you see these games, like you said, that are online. Some of them are extremely graphic. Like with the graphics getting better in Call of Duty and some of these games, even the new Mortal Kombat, I mean, it shows the bones break and like all of that.
There's muscles and tendons like hanging out.
Yeah. And, you know, Sega kind of created that ratings board back in the day that became the staple for what would later on become, you know, the official ratings board after Congress was like, oh, some of these games, Mortal Kombat particularly. But it just shows how much gaming has grown. And now, I mean, everyone knows Xbox and PlayStation are the titans.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I mean, that was like in 2001, 2001, Microsoft was like, hey, this is an avenue. Like, this is an avenue where there's a lot of potential for money to be made, and I think we can make tons of it. So Microsoft comes out with the Xbox and completely just blows Sega out of the water. Sega was dead on arrival then. So then you just had Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, like all going against each other as kind of like titans of the industry. But I mean, you have Microsoft, and we talked about it a little bit before. You had Microsoft coming out with like Halo. I remember how huge that game was.
Yeah.
And Microsoft having the ability of really having strength online, and really having the tools, and really having the team, and really having. I mean, they had a much. I don't know. They had a leg up. Whenever it came to crossing those online, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 like just came out or is about to, like literally either came out as of this recording like yesterday or tomorrow, and it's absolutely phenomenal. I've not been able to play it. I've just seen it, and I've seen some of the players playing it, and it's absolutely phenomenal. If I didn't have such a terrible computer, I would be purchasing the game myself. But I digress. I just have a terrible computer. But yeah, you had Microsoft getting into the game and being like, hey, this is an avenue for us. This is something that we can do, and this is something that we can do well.
Yeah, and not to be, you know, outdone with PlayStation, Xbox, because after the Wii, people kind of fell off Nintendo. And they kind of put it in the back burner, and they're like, Nintendo was what my dad played, but I'm a PlayStation kid. And then Nintendo came out with a haymaker with the Switch, and again, it just changed everything, because you can play on your TV, or you can just and carry on and play portably, and that was huge, because you can't do that with PlayStation or Xbox.
Wasn't that the what's the difference in the Switch and the Wii? I thought Nintendo's was the Wii.
The Wii came before the Switch.
Got you.
The Wii was when everyone was playing the sports, where you can like throw the joystick.
Yeah, that was a big deal. I think that was a big deal. I mean, everyone was like, "Hey, these video games are great," but everyone's getting fat. And this is a way to get people off their asses, and we can go bowling, we can play tennis, we can. I mean, it got people moving. Like, I would almost imagine, and I don't know if this ever existed. But I mean, Michelle Obama, whenever she was in the White House, I mean, she was big on the whole like the whole kids and movement thing. Like I bet you she was just playing croquet with like her little Wii. I don't know why I made it croquet. I don't even think they made croquet for that game. But playing croquet in the White House lawn on the Wii, like teaching kids. But yeah, that was a big risk at the time. That was a big risk because it didn't exist. Like the thought of but just like all innovation in video games, especially, it paid off, and it paid off big. We have to remember as we're spitting this to you guys in like a 30-40 minute time frame. I mean, this is technological advancements from the 1970s to right now, and there's like a slew of stuff that we didn't even talk about that happened in between that time, and that's in one lifetime. That's in one lifetime.
Yeah.
So
very rapidly.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy.
I mean, so much so that now they even have like esports professional leagues, where I mean, you can make millions like you're LeBron playing Fortnite or even Street Fighter and things like that. And I really miss my calling in life, because if there was a Mortal Kombat tournament, I'll tell you right now,
I bet you there is.
Not a bedroom in this country wouldn't have a poster of me with my game controller like I was the Jordan of Mortal Kombat. If I did any work on this earth, it was the amount of work I did in Mortal Kombat. So folks, if you're watching if you're watching and you want these hands, I'm telling you, we'll hook up gamer tags and you can see the legendary, not Bruce Lee, but this guy.
I thought you were gonna like make up a fake name for yourself.
I couldn't on the spot. I was going to, but I couldn't on the spot.
And then as you start progressing into the 2000s, in the new millennium, you started seeing us going into two phases. The mobile game sphere. I mean, you really started to see, other than like Tetris and what are some of the other ones? Snake. Whenever you had those Nokia phones and it would be like eating the little blocks.
Oregon Trail.
Or you had that was on a phone?
No, it was on a computer though.
Oh, but yeah, I mean, you had other than those games, you really started seeing gaming on mobile devices with like Candy Crush, huge game.
Angry Birds.
Yeah, Angry Birds. All of these games that became huge on mobile devices, and again, it goes back to that Game Boy era where you could take these with you anywhere, and now it's on a device where almost your whole life lives as of 2020, and it just gave portability and access to so many people by us going in that direction. And then you have the future, which absolutely belongs to virtual reality. And you've already seen people going in that direction as well. I'm waiting for, and I don't know if this exists or not, but I'm waiting for like a kind of like Call of Duty type with like the weapon and the goggles and like fatigues, and it causes like a sensation, like if you get hit or if you get shot. I'm not saying like I'm not saying like literal wounds or like electrocution or anything intense, but you know what I mean, like fully submersing yourself in these games. I absolutely think that we're heading in that way as of now, as of 5 years ago. So it'll be very interesting to see where we're going to be at 10 years from now.
Well, they have, I don't know if you feel the wounds, but they have something called the Void. And the Void is just that.
I thought you said wombs, like a womb.
No.
But then I got wounds. Made sense. Sorry.
Good Lord. But the Void, it's a virtual reality experience where you're carrying your blaster, you have a pack on, and you actually move around. And they had a Star Wars one here in Orlando. I believe they have a Marvel one in California, and I believe there's a Ghostbusters and an Alien one in New York, which you couldn't pay me enough money to do the Alien one. I can't watch the movie, let alone be in a virtual reality with this thing crawling at me.
Right.
And that's the other thing. I mean, with virtual reality getting so realistic, there's got to be the fear in people's minds, like, okay, we don't want people to get a heart attack. So how do we dial this back?
Side note, virtual reality. I mean, we weren't even wearing goggles. This is a thing for another episode, but you and I did that cop simulator.
Oh my gosh, I know.
With those weapons, I literally left there and I was like, I'm I just made it through the academy. Like, it was so realistic.
Yeah, we were both kind of like, I think we're qualified now.
Yeah.
We were both like, sign us up. You mean officers, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Where's my badge?
Exactly.
That's literally how I felt. So we want to hear from you guys. Are you guys big gamers? What consoles do you prefer? I feel like that's a big thing all the time, like PlayStation, Xbox, and this rivalry between the two. But let us know what you guys play, what games you're looking forward to, where you think the direction of all this is going. We'd love to hear from you guys. I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, I'll mention it again. Make sure that you follow us on our social media accounts. We have things just exclusively on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. They're not always just the same. So make sure that you guys follow us there. And thank you again. Like I try to mention it every episode. Thank you again so much for tuning in to our show every single week. Again, it keeps us motivated to keep producing content for you guys. We have some exciting things cooking up in the next few months. So whenever we're ready, we're super excited to let you guys know our future too. So thank you so much.
And as always, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more and be up to date on when they drop, just hit that subscribe button on the video there and you'll figure out whenever our videos drop, as well as the audio versions you can hear. We do have them on Spotify, Apple Podcast, still not Pandora.
Still not Pandora.
iHeartRadio, and a lot of other places. So wherever you want to hear it, just look for it. I'm sure you'll find it. But the links for that were also available on our social medias. And if you guys enjoyed this episode of video games, check out High Score on Netflix. It just dropped fairly recently. As of this recording, I think it just dropped. And it's a really much deeper dive with a much bigger budget than we had to give you the history of these video games. So if you enjoy video game history, check out High Score on Netflix. But that will do it for us on this week's edition of Beg Pardon. As always, he's been Anthony. I've been Carl. So remember, aim for the highest score, because if you're not first, you're last. Until next time.
Wait, people have budgets to do this?